Good morning. Good morning, everybody. It's 27th of April, 2023. I think it's 2023. I have to check every now and then. But we're here for our board meeting, and we have our agenda ready. So I see since we do have a quorum, we are able to start and go ahead. And we have the next thing, or the first thing coming, which is something that all of us really anticipate, and that is the Inspire Awards that we get from our individuals. And I'm going to ask our Deputy Director, Ms. Frederick, to talk about this and to get everybody started on it.
Thank you, Judge Smolkin. Good morning, everyone. This morning we have two Inspire Awards. The first one, Melissa Slatnick from Technical and Environmental Services Group will be presenting to one of her employees.
Good morning. Good morning. Today's Inspire Award is for extraordinary service for Mr. Casey Hanna. And Mr. Hanna works out at BWI. He supports our Maryland Aviation Administration client. And before I even start for the Extraordinary Service Award, I do want to say that anytime Casey's name comes up, everybody says, he's so great. he's such a good guy. You know, he can do anything. So for this particular nomination, what happened out at BWI was I have to read this. A programmable logic controller went down for a piece of machinery which offloads sanitary waste from the aircraft. MES is not responsible for maintenance or upkeep or anything related to these PLCs, programmable logic controllers. But when it went down due to a battery failure, MAA did call MES to see if we could help out. Of course, we're there and we usually can say yes. So we said, sure, let's take a look at it. Come to find out, the program was erased because the battery went dead. So, of course, the easy thing to do would be to, reinstall the program, but MAA did not have a copy of the program. So that would mean the other choice would be to have it, have somebody come out, reprogram it, cost around 10 grand, take about 3 weeks for downtime, which wouldn't really work because this station is needed. The other one is across the airport and, not convenient. So, Mr. Hanna then took it upon himself to find the contractor that had originally installed this software, found they were out of business. So he went and actually found the programmers who wrote the program, got in touch with one of them, was able to get a copy of the program, had it reinstalled. The next day it was up and running. So, I was really pleased, and it took a little extra effort, but as I said, I always hear that about Casey. He's willing to put in the extra effort. So thank you very much, Casey. It's an honor to award this to you.
He is resting on his laurels.
In lieu of Judge Smolkin being here, will the two board members present stand and take a picture of Mr. Hanna? There you go.
Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been detective work, a little bit. You're going to be Dog the Bounty Hunter.
Yeah, we always did that.
All right. On three, get a little bit closer together.
It works.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very well done in many ways. I've been in many airplanes, and if you look at the top of what we are seeing now, it looks like the tremendous number of things you have to do to have an airplane operate. It's just astounding that it's sitting there instead of inside the airplane. I mean, you have, many things to put together, and it's a very, very terrific idea that has been done, and thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next.
One more. Yep. Oh, yeah. The next award, Tim Ford from Environmental Operations will be presenting.
Good morning, everybody.
I'm told I have to emote. I've never had a problem emoting before, except when it comes to these meetings. I have to project, that's right.
Yes.
For those of you that know, we have a contract with Hartford County. It's an integrated solid waste management contract, meaning we manage everything in their solid waste department from soup to nuts, including environmental monitoring. And Chuck McCullen runs or handles all of the monitoring, environmental compliance and monitoring issues at the landfill in the county. So in March of 2023, the landfill gas flare at the closed Bush Valley landfill in Hartford County went down unexpectedly. Chuck determined the cause of the failure was a faulty flow meter microchip. Now, when he went to find the replacement part, he found that because of manufacturing problems in that sector, the lead time on the replacement was 8 to 12 weeks away. So if you don't know what a landfill gas flare does, is it destroys methane, which is a powerful greenhouse gas, and critical in terms of compliance at the landfill. Chuck couldn't wait 8 to 12 weeks. The other option was to rent something, and that would have cost the client a ton of money. Chuck, being who he is, he MacGyvered the microchip. So he found a way to bypass the wiring. He looked at the wiring schematics and found a way to temporarily bypass the faulty chip circuitry and got the flare back up and running. I don't know how he did it. Maybe solder. Did you use bubble gum as baling wire? Did you use bubble gum and baling wire? Yeah, but he did it. And his combination of critical thinking and problem solving avoided months of undesirable methane emissions, as well as the potential for gas migration exceedance. Gas could leave the property basically because these flares pull the gas inward. So, good job, Chuck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It shows that we are looking forward. All right. I think our next matter has to do with the board, and it has to do with the approval of minutes. The members of the board have been given copies of the minutes of March 30th, 2023. And I now ask if there are any corrections or other matters pertaining to it. Hearing none, we will approve this March 2023 will be approved. All right. Next thing we have is Dr. Glass, our executive director, who has many things to tell us, I think.
I do, sir. Thank you very much.
Go right ahead.
Next slide.
Go right ahead.
Really quickly, $19 in total expenses to report. However, there will be more, and because I did go to Atlanta to accept an award for MES. Next slide, which is going to come up later, so I won't preempt it. Lots of engagement, lots of moving parts to the agency. One to highlight is that, and this is almost to also remind Deputy Ferketic that I'll be on the next board meeting. I'll be here, but virtually. So I'm going to ask Deputy Ferketic to take the lead on the director's report and other things. So,
I'll be in Canada.
Oh, she'll be in Canada. I'll be giving the director's report. She'll be on vacation. She'll be at a meeting. I don't know if she's
at a meeting,
virtual in or not. Anyway,
yeah.
We're fine. So if she doesn't get the helm, I'll still have the helm. But two keynote. I don't know what's going on. I've been invited to keynote 2 professional meetings in the next month. One is to present to the ACEC Washington Metropolitan area on May 9th. And then also the Chesapeake Bay Program Scientific Technical Advisory Committee, because I've been casually studying biochar for about 6 years, and so they asked me to be the keynote for the luncheon there too. So 2 keynote luncheons. I don't know what's going on. After the Tri-Con, it's like, I guess I'm in a pool. I'm in a pool for free keynote speakers on professional matters in the region. So hey, yay. I will have to announce contact with Bioenergy DevCo, but environmental operations did kick off food waste traveling up to the anaerobic digester at the Jessup location, the Food Authority. So that's support for them anaerobically digesting food waste. And the Hugo New contact is related to USDA bipartisan infrastructure law, EJ40, environmental justice 40% of the infrastructure law going to overburdened communities. So there's a large opportunity, maximum $50 million over 5 years that I'm working with Hugo New, MDOT, TSO, Secretary's Office, and trying to find collaborations with DNR and MDE. So the conversations have started. It's like a early June deadline, and it's just an intentional way to try to help stimulate the environmental justice practice that we're attempting to develop. We have one small project attempting to develop at MES for service to the statewide. And the last is Deputy Furketic joined me at the Prince George's County MRF, just getting back to site visits. And she was enthralled by the engineering involved, being a long-term MES employee, but focused in one silo. She didn't have the experience of seeing everything and having a great tour by Mr. Ryan, but, Ms. Filiaggi and Miss Ford, not Mr. Ford, the whole management team there and all of the staff there. We had a great visit, and it's operating. I forget the number, but after the optical sorters, they had a $6 million upgrade a year and a half ago. It's going to get payback within 3 to 4 years on the upgrade from being able to sort the different higher levels of plastics, different levels of plastics. So very cool. Commodities are also at a high level, so that's partially why, but it's really a successful recycling program that you've seen it before, but anyway, we had our visit. It was great. Next slide. So smaller number of recruitment activities. However, I did write a little story, not a story, but I want to tell you about, we mentioned the effort. I gave Ms. Slatnick praise. I'll give it to her again for corralling the entire agency for our advertising for interns for the summer. We had 92 applications for approximately 10 internships. It was so... The students that applied were so diverse and talented that I did not get a Sea Grant Fellow, so we have a funding in the executive office for a Sea Grant Fellow. None met our needs in a mutual match. So we're bringing on 2 that you'll meet over the summer, and they are talented, really talented students. I won't praise GPAs, but just, no one below a 3.0, right? So it was just a lot of talent that's coming in, and we're really, really happy, and that solidifies the relationships with the contacts at those universities, and we're continuing to build on that. I plan for them the 2 interns in the executive office to focus on EV charging and solar canopy, the other side of the parking lot. We want to look at how we can get access to grant monies for those, environmental justice, climate resilience and sustainability, and then also help us with the performance management program. And then I'm going to continue the effort on biochar, even though we don't have an actual capital project right now in that space. But this is all not hard branding and marketing, but just the fact that our presence in the environmental space is known amongst the universities. And, I do have to shout out, because I'm on their advisory board, the UMBC College of Engineering and Information Technology. 34 of the 92 were from UMBC. So that is becoming our largest connection point pipeline for our environmental specialists and a lot of our jobs. So we've hired, I know we hired one intern from UMBC from a year ago. And we look forward to, as these sophomores and rising juniors and seniors graduate, to bring them on and help us grow. Next slide. So that's connected to the recruitment. This is mainly because the Lieutenant Governor, you'll see the Lieutenant Governor visited us in the Women's History Month, and I wanted to clarify, and now I've printed out and saved them. We were at 28.19% in FY22. We did not hit the 29%. The prior year, we were at 32.42%. And so we were, so as we've written things, as I've said things, we just said we were at 29. So I wanted to be clear publicly in the stream. Prior to that, we've toggled around 28, 29% since FY20, FY18, but I wanted to give kudos, and I'll go in order. So I'll go with Mr. Barnes first, because that 10-year period is his entire tenure at MES, supported by, obviously, Ms. Crosby, his boss, but also, obviously, every single program manager, every single project lead at MES, that as we curate talented organizations to sub to or prime as MBEs, all of the team, all of MES working together throughout the state is how MES has achieved that. From where they were very similar, MES was very similar. I wasn't here at the time, so I'm not going to claim credit. But from FY13, very similar to other state agencies, to FY21, FY22, that's a whole agency effort. And hopefully, if someone wants to know how to do it, we can help them understand. So anyway, just wanted to shout that out. And, you know, as Mr. Barnes gets challenged with challenging our managers, give them all, everybody, it's great. It's just great work. It's really work to be proud of. And anyway, so I just wanted to show the board that graph. Thanks a lot. Next slide. So as an update for the 5-year strategic plan that you all approved last year, we did meet on April 14th for our third, I believe, quarterly strategic meeting. And we started really sinking our teeth into the challenge. So we have 30 measures that have gone through one iteration. The highlight is the week prior to and submissions as late as 5 a.m. the morning of. So this is really, as for a former professor, this is really just like having a senior project due, and people, some talented students done well in advance, you know, they ask questions well in advance, others waiting till the last minute. But we got our first iteration done. No one expects for the first draft is the hardest draft, right? So we already have scheduled a July meeting that will go through an iteration. I get to take out a red pen, haven't done it in about 8 years, throw out pages, and we'll solidify and we'll refine.
Well, you never forget how to.
I know, it's actually kind of reminds me. I used to grade very quickly, but I have the key. Anyway, so we intend to update you on our successes and our challenges this summer, how well we are meeting the goals of the strategic plan, but it's a 5-year strategic plan, and we will have made progress in the first year, as you've seen from other metrics that you see every month. So that's the update. It was a great meeting. Who did I tell this? Someone said to me yesterday, actually, that even for folks that have been here for a very long time, because of how the organization is structured, having this program allows them to see, and we have the challenge that people are not doing just their subject matter expertise for the performance measures, so then they have to dive a little deeper and learn a little bit more about another part of the organization. And I think we'll all be better for it, they'll all be better managers for it, and we'll have a product that we can carry along with others to our next session, as our DLS analysts did critique some of our measures as being not as quantitative, but we had barely started, it was a great meeting. And I think everyone's mental health was better after it was over.
Yes.
So, next slide. We had a wonderful visit from Lieutenant Governor Miller for Women's History Month on March 31st. it was treated as an open house. She was here for about an hour and a half. We were thankful for her time. Like the great engineer she is, she had already done her research on us, her homework, and asked pointed questions throughout the tour. And we really came in this room and pointed out just through pictures. So we can't take her all over the state, but she saw all of our great facilities throughout the building through picture and throughout walking. Gave her drone demonstration, so you can see the drone demonstration on the lower left. Great picture on our patio and back. And the Terrapins always steal the show, and she was really engaged throughout. And so a thanks to everyone, comms team, but also prior to comms team even, Ms. Carla Loving for stepping up her game and responding to the challenge that was presented to her to try to see if she could get a VIP for one of our events. And she called the office and got the appointment. So thanks, and it was a great event. The weather held out, and we were thankful for it. Next slide. So MES and our partners, so Ms. Heller as a county administrator, and our partners won. So that's just a picture of me being there, so proof that I was present. But the award, we're building our award.
And it's not a selfie.
It's not a selfie, but it's kind of fuzzy. That's Tim Ford's work. Anyway, so SWANA's Sustainable Materials Management Technical Division's Organization Award. So I was honored to travel to Atlanta to receive this award on behalf of MES, its partners in county government and other state agencies. And it's an all Maryland in general award, obviously, because lots of county codes, laws, or how we are able to accomplish these goals. So it's presented to the organization for advancing the sustainable use of materials throughout their life cycle to minimize waste and environmental impacts. Evaluation criteria included decreasing disposal rate, reducing environmental impacts, increasing socioeconomic benefits, and the increased capacity of stakeholders to adopt and implement sustainable materials management practices. So this award highlights the significant impact that operations of MES and our partners are having on reducing landfill disposal and creating a greener environment. In addition, our goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, increase stakeholder input, and small business and MBE participation has shined a light on our commitment to a more sustainable future. So I had to read that one because it's that significant, and shout out to environmental operations, but it is all MES. All the groups participated in winning this award, and it's a shared state award. So honored to attend, and it's awesome. So.
I might add, as a child of the 70s, that picture looks clear to me.
No one can hear you. You're not emoting enough. Anyway. From vacation, so he's in a little spirited mood. Next slide. Oh, next one. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Yeah. Mr. Laseco. Mr. Laseco and Mr. Agnoli also bookended the event and had over 100 participants by Mr. Ford's count, demonstrating that MES is showing. This is on the beneficial use of landfill gas at the conference, and it was super well attended for for all of us that have been to conferences, a late conference meeting, and it just goes and shows that we're demonstrating leadership not just in Maryland but on a national stage, and really thanks to Mr. Laseco and Mr. Agnoli. Next slide. So I asked for you all to be able to see this. The T-shirts, because people don't like white T-shirts at MES, and so we end up getting, and it's very hard to put all that color in a T-shirt. But I wanted to really give a shout out to Ms. Quigley and the whole comms team for that beautiful image that's on our website and around for our celebration of Earth Day 2023. We actually took the picture and bounced, but I'm sure she'll hear about the acknowledgement later. So isn't that awesome? I mean,
that is wonderful.
Isn't that beautiful? I mean, it's just beautiful.
It brings in so many aspects.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, obviously the Terrapin's in there. Though.
When she did it at first, it was a butterfly, and I said,
"Oh, it's a butterfly."
Maybe a turtle.
There you go. Next slide.
He's looking.
So now there's a video. We have the sound. So
I don't know if we
we don't have sound. All right. Oh.
Problem in here.
Well, it'll get posted, but I got stuff to read. So throughout MES, let me read. Dundalk Marine Terminal trash cleanup. Friendsville Water Treatment Plant site gardening. This is long, I want to say, but we want to acknowledge all of the staff all over the state participating in Earth Day and doing, even though they do so much with their jet stars, and they're the green shirts. No one, yeah, we don't have anyone, well, maybe someone's back will show up. BWI trash cleanup. Headquarters tree planting as a part of the 5 million trees initiative. We have one of that 5 million now. We can show it to you. The Montgomery County grinding facility, gardening. ECI and gardening and landscaping. So at headquarters was a full day, and we had a drone flight demonstration. Crownsville outdoor facility upkeep. Dorsey Run Advanced Wastewater Treatment Plant installing bird nesting boxes. At the Durable Medical Equipment Reuse Center, trash cleanup. It's along 301, right?
Yep.
It's right on 301. Brown Station Road Sanitary Landfill, leachate treatment, trash cleanup. Headquarters, the odor sensitivity testing. MCI, outdoor facility upkeep, planted roses, added outdoor seating for employees and visitors. Rising Sun Wastewater Treatment Plant, I've got installed hummingbird feeder. ECI Cogen, outdoor facility upkeep. Harford County, gardening, landscaping, and roadside trash cleanup. Midshore 1, roadside trash and landscaping and office gardening. Freedom headquarters, roadside trash cleanup. Freedom Wastewater Treatment Plant, litter cleanup. Frostburg Water. Activity unknown. They took a picture, great for them. Midshore 2, trash cleanup, gardening. And I like this, and we probably need to do this, a vegetable garden.
Yeah.
So I think that's one we should learn from them and maybe find a place.
We used to have one out at Crownsville years ago.
We need to have one here. I mean, we got space.
Yeah, great idea.
Good time of year, sir.
You don't want to
Cambridge Water
where we're
Garden.
coming from.
Dundalk Marine Terminal, water, wastewater, trash cleanup. This is the park and ride and wastewater facilities, trash cleanup, and bluebird nest box. How do you know it's a bluebird anyway? Montgomery County MRF, gardening and trash cleanup. I mean, it's bluebird. How do you attract a bluebird?
There's particular
gardening
kinds of boxes.
Oh, they're really?
Right.
Oh, see, you learn something every few minutes. Headquarters gardening. And Janet even has brown stuff on her knee. That shows that she was actually gardening. Prince George's County MRF, gardening and landscaping. And Hartmiller Island shoreline trash cleanup. So it was a 4-minute video, but we thought, I mean, everyone throughout MES, all over at every site participating, and we get to shine at the headquarters, but you know we have a group picture, and so that'll be on the website to show all of the nice smaller projects, but making a difference. And I think I'm on my last slide. So we honored Mr. Williams last month for 35 years of service. And we already knew that he was also retiring soon. He chose not to come again, but we wanted to honor him again and recognize his 35 years and all his work and wish him a fruitful and relaxing retirement. So, to Mr. Williams. And that's it for me, I think. That's it. Yep. And next, as a part of, I don't know why it's part of this section, but Mr. Tosi, he doesn't bore you all 90 days of the legislative session, but he's going to enthrall you now with the outcome of the legislative session and legislation that will impact us once it's signed into law.
Session's a lot like a basketball game. It goes back and forth, back and forth. So if you watch the last 2 minutes.
And it comes down to the last minute.
Right.
Good
I
enough.
like to say that the days go by like weeks, but the weeks go by like days. They do. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so just general overview. They considered about 2,200 to almost 2,300 bills. 900 passed. They got a $63 billion operating budget. The $7 billion capital budget includes MDOT. So if you take MDOT transportation, that's about $4.2 billion capital budget. We I think did pretty well budget-wise. We had a number of capital projects, and nothing was affected, reduced in any way. So that's always good. We did have a couple of items in the budget in terms of narrative. There is the annual funding statement in terms of unrestricted net assets, overhead rate. We have to let the General Assembly know what those items are. That seems to be popping up every year now. They have to do that every year because the budget's only a one-year document. We did support the DME program. Department of Aging has the Durable Medical Equipment Program. We support that written every year, and the funding is increased every year, and so we're always happy to support that. There is budget narrative for the Maryland Department of the Environment to continue reporting monthly in terms of Back River and Patapsco. They are required to consult with MES, but the status of MES's presence at Back River is sort of up in the air, so I'm not sure how that's going to work, but kind of interesting. And then I think the highlight of the budget process was when one of the subcommittee budget chairs highlighted MES's aggressive approach to reducing the vacancy rate to another state agency, which, I think Dr. Glass and the whole team should be very proud of that. We can go to the next slide. So I'm just going to go through a couple of different bills that passed, and I'm going to go over them very briefly. If you have any comments or questions, you can ask. The Baltimore Regional Water Governance Task Force is a collaborative effort from the Baltimore County Executive and the Mayor of Baltimore City. It's a 13-member task force. 5 members from Baltimore City, 3 from Baltimore County, 1 that's chosen amongst one jurisdiction by the Baltimore Metropolitan Council, which has to be from either Anne Arundel, Hartford, Howard, the other one. Carroll, yeah, that's right. Carroll, you're right. So 1 member from there, the Senate gets 1 member, the House gets 1 member, the governor gets to appoint 2 members. They are going to embark on a 2-year journey, roughly 2 years, and report out on recommendations on a governance structure. We are not on the task force, but we and MES and MDE are required to be consulted on the recommendations. So we are going to be, I think, attending every one of those meetings and be a part of that process. I think that'll be great. You can go to the next slide. Northeast Maryland Waste Disposal Authority, Sunset Act of 2023. This is going to be, essentially, the bill does 3 things. It terminates their bond issuance authority beginning June 1, 2023. Now, they had already issued some guidance to, I think, the Legislative Policy Committee saying they weren't intending on issuing any bonds, so that really doesn't have too big of an impact on them. It requires the Department of Legislative Services to conduct a sunset review by December 1st, 2024, and then requires MES to review their functions, employees, active contracts, and analyze whether we can assume all or a portion of it, again, by December 1, 2024. Now, if the sunset review results in legislation that actually sunsets the organization, we would then be required, whether or not they're absorbed by MES or another entity, we would be required then to assume their functions either, temporarily or permanently. So, but that's, I think probably just a contingency in case they decide to actually sunset the organization, which is not a done deal at this point. Go to the next slide. There you go. Statewide recycling needs assessment. So this started out as a bill that would implement what they call an extended producer responsibility program. It was, which is a way of encouraging financially producers of packaging to have more sustainable practices, essentially. A lot of the packaging for products that are sold is not really recyclable, and I think there's a lot of urgency by the General Assembly to kind of move in a different direction. So the bill was heavily amended. It's one of those bills where it's a 37-page bill that has about 3 pages of text left in it. It was amended by the Senate, then it was amended heavily by the House, and then it went to conference. And then what ended up happening with this is that they ended up establishing a advisory council. They established a needs assessment requirement, which MDE has to lead, but they are required to procure an outside entity to do that. And then they also put in place the requirement for a producer responsibility organization, but there is no there's nothing else to the bill at this point. It would require, there could be, I would say it's probably leading in the direction of implementing a full producer responsibility, extended producer responsibility program, but that's going to be determined based on a study done on the needs assessment. So we're sort of headed in that direction in this state. Now, it doesn't really have an impact on MES because the packages are still going to be produced. They're still going to go to facilities. They still have to be processed, and we manage a lot of those facilities. So it really is, the program is really, when you boil it down, it's really financial sort of shift of cost burden from counties, which manage these facilities on their own right now through tax dollars, and if fully implemented, it would allow counties to apply for reimbursement. And then what those numbers look like is really unclear at this point, but allow counties to apply for reimbursement for those costs of collection and processing. So it's going to be a big deal eventually, I think, because I really think the General Assembly is positioned to move forward with a full program. Just they weren't quite willing to do that quite yet. So any questions on that? Probably not. Next slide. Cannabis reform. The one reason I wanted to talk about this is just because the board's responsibility for approving major policy and procedure changes, that's probably going to be before the board at some point, either this spring or early summer. The state of Maryland approved by referendum the recreational use of cannabis by a pretty large margin. The bill that was before the legislature this year was mainly a business licensing bill, so it doesn't really have any impact. But I know DBM, the Department of Budget Management, is starting to work on some policies and procedures with respect to, testing, a whole plethora of different issues that probably have to be resolved in state policy with respect to state personnel. So we're going to be monitoring DBM. I'm in touch with DBM's personnel lead. And so we're going to be monitoring what they do, and then we're probably going to have to make some changes to policies here at MES. Other than that, it doesn't really affect us too much, especially the bill that passed this session.
It's imperative. Our people deal with heavy equipment and everything else. You can't have.
There's no real testing for impairment.
at that time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, what level is impairment? You know, there's a lot of really nuanced questions that have to be worked out, and not to mention the fact that the federal government still hasn't authorized recreational use. So you have CDL holders who have to still be at a zero tolerance level. They have medicals. You know, so it's going to be a little sticky. The federal government still hasn't opined yet on states' rights issues. So there could be, you know, potentially, I don't know if I really see that happening, but there could be a ruling by the federal government that the states do not have this authority to be able to move forward on recreational, which would reverse everything. Unlikely to happen, I think, especially with this administration, but who knows? So next slide. Family medical leave insurance program. So this is a bill that passed in 2022. It established a program that allows people to, it's like an unemployment insurance program for family medical leave. Allows people to utilize FAMLI benefits to care for themselves or a loved one. This session, they made some changes. The major changes that they implemented this year is that they delayed the implementation of the bill by about a year. So contributions were set to begin this year. They're gonna begin next year. And then there's gonna be a determination by the Secretary of Labor what the contribution rate is going to be, I think, by this October. So we're going to have a year of lead time, roughly, to start factoring that into our budget process. They also, the benefits portion also was delayed by roughly a year. And then the employer-employee contribution split is set at 50-50. There was some different scheme that was set up in the original bill that allowed the Secretary of Labor a little bit more latitude with respect to the size of the business, but I think they just decided this year that they were going to set it even 50-50. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that.
So that applies to private leases?
Yeah, it applies to every business in the state.
So there's no separate.
And there is a provision that requires state agencies to cover the full contribution for anybody making $15 an hour, but I think everybody here makes above that rate, or most people make above that rate.
Wages changes.
Which is minimum wage, yeah. So you know, I don't think that's going to have a too big of an impact on us.
But this is a debt you have to do 50-50.
Yes. Yeah, that'll be the law, you know, as of June or July 1. Yeah. Next slide. Please here. Clean trucks. So this is a big bill. It's a big initiative. A couple of years ago, I think it was 2019 maybe, Governor Hogan signed an MOU with about 15 other states to move towards clean trucks at a sort of a longer time frame. This accelerates that. It sort of overrides the MOU in a way, accelerates the state's transition to cleaner medium and heavy duty trucks. So on December 1, 2023, there's going to be some requirements set by MDE for the sale of, you know, and this bill applies only to new purchase. So if you own and operate, you know, medium and heavy, yeah, the dirty, well, I mean, it could be diesel powered, which is, you know, cleaner than gasoline, but they also have low I forget the term right now, but low emissions diesel as well. Lost my train of thought for a second. Yeah, I'm sorry. This only applies to new purchases. So the intent is really to phase out older equipment that's diesel powered. They do incorporate by reference. So the MDE is going to have to incorporate by reference and regulations the California Air Resources Board's Clean Trucks Act regulations. So California is the only state in the country that has the ability to have their own air quality emissions type rules and regulations with respect to vehicles. And so that's essentially what Maryland's going to be going by, not the federal government, but the California rule. And MDE can, or has to do what's called a needs assessment by December 1, 2024. And I believe that if they have, if they can demonstrate that there's not enough vehicles or the market's not big enough, they can delay implementation of this by about a year. Questions there? I think
Does it have anything to do with charging? Is there any mention of, in that needs assessment, how long it will take to have the charging stations to support?
Yes, so that's part of the study. There's going to be the availability of vehicles, there's going to be the availability of charging, and there's a couple more things in the bill that are nuanced. Anyway.
Thank you.
And there is actually one more item that I wanted to discuss. Marnie asked, where's Marnie? There she is. There was a bill that passed the state legislature, actually ended up being heavily amended, but it's kind of an interesting bill. The state is going to move towards encouraging state agencies to purchase organic compost mulch and soil amendments and aggregate, which is like stone. So the bill, House Bill 586, requires the Maryland Green Purchasing Committee to establish, the amended version of the bill, to establish specifications for purchasing compost, mulch, or other soil amendments produced from municipal solid waste, food waste, dredge material, which is really interesting, construction waste, yard waste, clean wood waste, or other recycled organic materials. So while this is located in a section of law with which MES is currently exempt, we can, again, we don't have to abide and abide by these rules, but we can opt to. So we'll see, whether or not that's something we can explore incorporating into our procurement practices. But I just wanted to mention that and give a shout out to Marnie for.
Is this a technical assistance opportunity for MES? We're doing a lot of stuff.
Well, really, it's
state agencies.
It's a procurement issue.
Yeah,
yes.
Yes, because you want to speak about the pronoun?
Is good for our client, MPA, who is looking into innovative reuse of their dredge materials. So having, the Maryland Green Purchasing Group include dredge material as a recycled material that the state needs to purchase is a good benefit for them. Dredge material recognized.
So MDOT-MPA's 500,000 cubic yards from harbor material being reused is the ultimate goal for sustainability for the harbor dredging. Did I get those numbers right?
My point is we know more about that than
Most definitely.
than most, and procurement issues. So.
Yep.
I mean, what it requires is it requires units of state government to include in their procurement specifications, essentially. So yeah, I mean, I think there's an opportunity for us to contribute to the conversation. It's going to be really up to each individual unit to determine whether or not these types of practices and products meet their needs. The bill was definitely heavily amended. There was a lot of more nuanced language in the bill, but it was sort of, I think, walked back a little bit into the final form. So anyway, well, that concludes mine. All right. Riveting about the 2023 General Assembly session.
Thank you. Thank you.
I had to be there.
You do have to be there. Yeah.
Thank you, Judge Malkin.
All right, thank you. So far, I have covered, I think, or you all have covered about the most amazing things that we have ever been able to do and imagine. And the only thing we need is a helicopter. If we got a helicopter, then we can get our people out there faster. We'll work on that. Small helicopter. Okay.
Yeah, our own helicopter.
Well, 2 or 3. So now we have the agency activity report. that you're looking at with accepted proposals. So I will give a little time to look at these. And anybody have any questions on this? All right, hearing none, we'll proceed to the next slide to Mr. Patel, our financial report. He's the one who could find the helicopter for us. No question. All right, sir.
Good morning. So, Mr. Tosi just mentioned that 975 bills passed in 2023 legislation. I consider myself very lucky. In my 37 plus years of accounting, not even 10% of those rules and regulations are changed. So, otherwise I won't be able to keep up with it. All right, so here is our labor sales by group. As I mentioned before, it is a very good trend. We are 12.53% over fiscal year 22 at this point. The good point about it is it's consistent. Last few months is always 12.25, 12.5, so it will keep on continuing that trend to, be maybe more than 12.5, maybe up to 13%. As I mentioned before, the certain factors that are affecting us is that our vacancy rate is down, much lower than the last year. There was good increases in the salaries because that was what mandated by the state, so the state gave these raises, so that increased our billable labor, and once we have more billable labor, we'll have more recovery. So those kind of effects, is helping in labor sales. But you will see in the later slides, actual billable hours has also increased, not only just due to the salary increases. So, and every single group has increased labor sales, from 6.80. Judge, go ahead. From 6.86% to almost 16.48%. So this is a very good trend, and it will be consistent going forward. And the increased labor sales, you will see in the later slides, is reflected in significant increase in our net earnings. So we'll go to slide number 2. So here is budget versus actual as of 9 months. If you look at the last line there, increase in net assets were projected to be 3.2 million. Now we are projecting at 5.2 million, which is a significant increase. As I mentioned, every time you have an increased labor sales, we're going to have more recovery of overhead and fringes. If we go line by line, the labor sales, the estimate is going to be 37 million, which is 2 million more than what we projected. Our fringe rate is 58%. Our overhead rate is almost 49 to 50%. So that 2 million will translate into $1 million more recovery on, so that's why this is extraordinary gains on that because of this labor sales increase. Our overhead recovery will be $465,000 more than budgeted. When we budget the fiscal year way ahead, so we are budgeting for the next year now, certain factors are not present there. We don't know what's going to happen. One of them became the interest income. For years, there was no interest income. Now, we are sitting at $885,000 in interest income. We didn't expect that, the state and because of the inflation and all that, the raises will be close to 8 or 9% during the year. Never heard of it before. So that was not projected. So that's why it is adding to our net income. Our net income is a 5.2 million. Last year it was close to 4.4 million. we have 2 more months to go. We will look into a couple of things, see, because what we can do with this additional unexpected earnings. One of the things we're going to do is we're going to increase our contingency fund. Because of the inflation and our increased revenues, we have to increase our contingency fund. So unlike last 3 years, where we were consistent with our net assets, we're going to increase the contingency fund, and, so that will be taken off from the net earnings. There are some other items that may come up, but we'll bring it to the board in next couple of meetings. We don't know how the stock market is going to go because we have this retirees health insurance. I wanted to have some cushion there last year, and so we may think into that direction, but we don't know what's going to happen with that for next 2 months.
Okay. Not, yeah.
Yeah. What's the annual payment we have to make on OPEB?
We make about $300,000 right now.
See, one thing you could do is you could put a cushion in there.
Correct.
Right.
And carry 2 years on the books.
Right.
So that if you had a tough year, you'd have that
Cushion.
through.
Calculation.
Yeah, so we are thinking in that direction also. And, we get the actuarial evaluations. They don't expect, if we lose, say, $500,000, $1 million, they don't expect us to make it up in next year.
Yeah.
It will be spread over 5 years and all that. But I have it in mind. So, we will try to see because this is, as I said, unexpected increase in net earnings.
The other place,
So we will use it for the best possible use, and we'll bring it to the board in the next 2
the
meetings.
other place you could do it is with health insurance, because sometimes in inflationary times that fluctuates. And to have a little money on your hip that way you've got it there, and it turns out to be an unpleasant surprise, you've got the money to pay it without having to rejigger your whole budget.
So if you look at the other, we have budgeted $125,000, which was mainly from the equipment fund. We are at $887,000 right now, mainly because of the interest income. I have conservatively projected at $885,000 because not only MES is going to benefit with this increase in interest, we are already allocating the midshore in the contingency fund, that are state contingency fund, which are going year over year. And on top of it, we have the special purpose fund, almost $17 million we received this year for capital projects. We will allocate now because if it was a short term, we're going to spend it. I was not allocating because it's a little complicated calculation month by month. But now we're going to go back. When we received it, how much we spent, and how much is left at the end of the year, and we're going to start allocating interest to that. So those capital projects, the funds we receive from the legislature will have increased because of this interest income that MES is going to allocate to that. So it will be allocated to maybe 10 different projects. So that's why I'm going to conservatively estimating we're going to keep it consistent where it is, and then we're going to go back and allocate all the interest for unspent fund for the state. So, any questions so far? Next slide. And this is a year-over-year analysis. So we have actual as of March 2023 and actual as of March 2022. Almost every line items, which is the detail of all the operations, is increased. The labor sales, now we are comparing not with the budget. We are doing $2 million better than the budget. Now, if we are comparing with the fiscal year 22, our labor sales are up 12.53%. The billable hours, which is the true measure, we are growing, is up 40,000, which is almost 4.88%. So our labor hours are also growing. The overhead recovery is higher. So overall, overhead variance is 28% more than the last year. So the fringe, usually, Mr. Neal just mentioned health insurances and all that. You don't, our administrative fee went up, so we did not project that. So health insurance, we don't even consider as a major factor in our net earnings. So, but still, you know, on the fringe variance, we are still doing much better than the last year. Working capital, which is, some of the projects give us advance. Major projects give us an advance. The smaller projects and, you know, many of the projects do not give us an advance. Mainly technical services projects, you know, we do not get an advance. There we charge 3% working capital fee. And there's a significant increase in working capital over last year, much more than that will be estimated based on the increased labor sales. So I have to look into that, you know, what is causing, you know, significant additional working capital. It's already 202,000 more, which is 44% more. So I have to still look into that. But those are the actual numbers, you know, it is automatically calculated. It's just the analysis of it. And project variances mainly is used oil. And then we have a Poplar Island that we own, that the Poplar Island real estate, and then, you know, the mortgage is paid off, now is less expensive, so we are making, you know, some additional project variances there too. So, and if you look at the revenues are significantly higher, which will justify that we're gonna increase our contingency fund, because, you know, we want to stay within 5% of those revenues, you know, as a contingency fund. So, as I mentioned, you know, the expected increase in net asset is 5.2 million, and then we will find beneficial use of some of the excess funds. We'll bring it to the board. And I think that explains all the financial results, which are very good, and it's consistent. That's the good part of it. It's not going up and down. It's consistently good results. Any questions?
I have one. We usually have a sheet that shows our slow pay customers. Is the absence of that sheet an indication?
It's in the package. It's in the package, though.
Oh, okay.
I don't know that it's
We don't
listed by
maybe-
customer
Yeah,
anymore.
well, it used to be listed by customer.
Yeah, well.
You have some pretty big balances.
Yeah.
So we are keeping an eye on it. We are not listing by the customers because, you know, these are our regular customers for years and decades, and they're government customers. Sometimes, you know, they have processing delays and all that stuff. But we do not. I don't see any significant issues on our collections. We don't expect there are any customers or any of the projects where we have any doubts on collections. There may be some small haulers and all that, and the only recourse we have with them is we stop access for them and put them on the payment plan, and, you know, they will eventually pay for it. But yes, we are not putting all the details of individuals, but it is, we can share with you, anyone who is interested in it, but I think it is significantly better than previous, and I don't expect any major losses for the bad debt.
So the $1.3 million that's over 120 days, you're not losing any sleep over?
No, because we are in constant contact with them, and as I say, a lot of them are major projects from the governments, okay, local governments and all that. And some of those governments, you know, we, like all the recycling and all that, we have their revenues also. So we always have a little, for majority of those major clients, we have some offset, but they are very good. Sometimes, you know, they go over the budget, they have to redo the new PO. That takes time, and no, I'm pretty confident of all our efforts, and, you know, the response we get from the project managers there, the finance department of those major customers, that we will receive most of the money. I don't expect any significant write-off by the end of this year or any accounts that I know of in the future.
Well, that's fine. When you get to be as old as I am, you become a little bit cynical.
Correct.
There are some people in this world that think paying their obligations on time is a character flaw.
Right.
And I like to watch out for those folks,
Right.
because they have a philosophy. And, it's called OPM, Other People's Money. So just keep an eye on
Yeah,
it.
yeah, we are having a good balance because, you know, like all the landfills and all that, our costs, the major costs are fixed costs. And therefore, you know, we have to work with those haulers, you know, so that, you know, at least they are paying a little bit of their variable cost. Okay. But if they go over like 90 days, the first thing we look at is if they don't respond. Once they don't respond, we shut them off. That's where the bad signs are. If they start paying on the installment, you know, it is okay, we'll work out.
I was never privileged to be a member of the Annapolis Yacht Club, but they had a wonderful practice that if you had not paid your dues, they put your invoice, unpaid invoice, in the entrance for you. And if you ever bounced the check, they put them right at the entrance where the maitre d' was to seat you. And it had a large impact on behavior. Sometimes the simplest things are better.
Yeah. One last thing is that we started implementing the interest fees on late payments. We are not charging the interest fee to the local governments, you know, state government clients, or cities and municipalities. But for private hauler, our leaf grow customer, our product customers, now we are charging them the interest fee. So, and we give them one-time break, say, okay, we are charging the interest fee, but this is the first time we started, so we say, okay, this time we're gonna write off the interest fee, but that will expedite the collections from the smaller haulers.
We'll get you listed in over 90.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Patel. After what I've heard you, and I have listened to you, let's make it another helicopter, so we got two of them, just to make sure.
They crash into each other.
And don't worry, there, Chief Counselor, I think we can take care of that. Yeah, I'll teach you how to fly.
God.
Looking forward to it.
I've learned how to do it, sort of, once, actually.
Sort of. An aviation term of art.
Okay, thank you very much. If I see one in front of the MES building, I'll really be a little surprised, but maybe not. Okay, now we have Mr. Barzell for his Human Resources report.
Good morning, Judge. Good morning, everyone. Since this went to print from last week, we've added one more vacancy. We're at 33 vacancies, which puts us still at an outstanding rate of 4.26%. So we're well within our stretch goals comfortably. Little update on our interns from what is printed. For our admin group, we have by start dates for our 2 executive office interns. We are processing 2 packages for our 2 EDR interns. We have a start date for our environmental ops marketing intern. We have 2 hire packages completed for our 2 of our 4 interns, and the 2 additional candidates are being contacted by the group. So we made tremendous progress the past 2 weeks with our interns. Looking good there. From our perspective, we're closely monitoring 2 items that Mr. Tosi mentioned in the legislative session, and particularly the FMLI insurance that's going to be and maybe the cannabis in particular, because that is going to be a mandatory item for negotiation with the unions for collective bargaining. So I'm sure DBM will probably not coming out until the summer, and probably in the new fiscal year, because I'm sure all the state unions are going to have an important piece of the bargaining session. So monitoring information from DBM daily. It would definitely will have an impact on us, with our CDL drivers, because that's still subject to federal law.
Well,
other than that, kudos to my staff working really hard to get all the interns on at a rate we're very proud of. You can see the impact this has on our budget. So.
All right, thank you, sir. Next, we have Ms. Crosby and procurement, and I think she has 3 of them. Is that correct today? I think so. So
We're back to 4.
If you're ready to proceed.
Yes, it's awesome. Good morning, everyone. Item 1 for the Technical and Environmental Service Division. The project is Martineck State Park. This is a $50,000 gallon elevated water storage tank repair. This was a competitively sealed bid. The awarded company is Marnolius Painting, Inc., and the amount of the contract is $342,320. And the MBE goal for this project is 10%.
All right. Are there any questions to be raised? All right. Is there a motion to approve the item?
Motion to approve.
All right. And I see a second. Any other questions? Anything to state? All right. Now we'll call for a vote. And all those in favor, please raise your hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Therefore, it's approved, and we move to the next one.
Item 2 is for the Environmental Dredging and Restoration Division. This is for the Dundalk Marine Terminal Project, the groundwater treatment plant upgrade. The awarded company is Maverick Construction, LLC, in the amount of $881,000. And the MBE goal for this project has been increased to 17.5%.
All right. Anyone have any questions regarding this matter? Okay. Is there a second? Is there a motion to approve? I'll second. And we also have a second as well. Any further discussions on it? If not, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Say aye. 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 Any opposed? None. Therefore, it is approved. And go ahead on, please, Ms. Crosby.
Okay. Item 3 is also for environmental dredging and restoration. The project is Deep Creek Lake Arrowhead Cove Dredging Project. This is a competitive sealed bid. This is a solicitation prior to award. The advertisement date is to be determined. The estimated amount for the project is $1,000,004. The MBE goal for this project is also increased 12%.
14 on the slide. Which one is it?
12.
12 to 14? Okay.
Yeah, I thought you and Tim.
I think it's 14.
14.
Mm-hmm.
14, we'll try.
They go from 12 to 14.
From 10 to 14.
I thought,
We'll go 14. We'll go 14.
Going once?
The managing director is, we'll go with what the managing director's saying.
Well, then Tim said 14. Okay, but I thought he said you and he talked.
Well, let's not have it.
I need to abstain from this vote.
I said 14.
Yeah. Mr. Witt?
I need to abstain from this.
Most definitely.
All right. Anything else on this matter? Any questions? Ward?
Yes.
No questions? Is there a motion to approve this matter?
I'll move it.
All right. Approved and approved for vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Comes back to us when it's awarded, right? It was over that number by more than 10%.
Yep. Anything else on this one? All right.
But Mr. Witt, please, I know you had to abstain, but please convey it to your leadership that it's moving along. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Item 4, also environmental dredging and restoration. This is a change order. The project is environmental management system self-audit at Maryland Port Administration Facility. This is a contract from the AE short list. The contractor is Anchor QEA LLC. This is a change order in the amount of $472,341.83. The MBE goal is 22% on this project, and the contractor is meeting the goal.
All right. Any questions on this matter? All right. Is there a motion to approve the item?
I'll move it.
All right. I'll second it.
Second.
And any other questions on this matter? All right. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed or otherwise? None. Therefore, this has been approved as well. And thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Crosby. All right, now we have the procurement notifications to look at. If anyone has any questions, certainly you can feel free to ask. These are the 25,000 to 200,000. All right. Seeing none, we move on. And to the legal report from Councilor Hahn.
Well, good morning, everyone. The issue I have before you today are the draft bylaws for the board that were sent to you all by email last week. If it's acceptable, I'll just run through these briefly, and feel free to ask any questions you may have about any of the provisions. In drafting these bylaws, I did rely on a number of approved bylaws from other organizations, particularly those of governmental entities. I looked at several from private entities, but I think that there's a significant difference because there are statutes that create bylaws requirements in the Corporations and Associations article that don't apply to MES as a governmental entity. So they were useful, but generally I rely on bylaws that have been approved for other governmental entities. Article 1 of the draft bylaws simply states what this board is and what the agency is, and these provisions were taken from the MES Act. Article 2 sets forth powers of the board, and again, I relied on the general provisions that are in the MES Act. Rather than get into any kind of specificity that might lead to a challenge down the road, I felt it was better to be very general here and rely on the authorization of powers that's in the MES Act itself. Article 3, we discussed the members of the board. Section 301 is essentially a recitation of the existing MES Act and which members hold which positions. Section really 302 and 303 are again a recitation of what's in the MES Act, and as well as general constitutional law in Maryland that in general a member of a state board does hold their position until their successor qualifies. I added section 304 to make it really more as a reminder to all board members that there is a provision in state law that requires members of any board or commission to participate in at least 50% of the meeting. That's the reference there. Article 4, there is a glaring typographic error in that I have two sections 4.01. So what is now identified as the chair will actually become section 4.02, and all of the subsequent sections will be renumbered to reflect that accordingly. In section 4.01 is the first reference to what is described as the organizational meeting. And what's anticipated is because the board is required to elect its officers, that rather than have the officers serve for an indefinite period, there will be an annual organizational meeting, at which point all the officers and several other individuals will be elected by the board. Right. So that is one thing that's not in the statute. The statute does not call for an organizational meeting, nor does it have terms for officers, but I think it will allow the board to reevaluate every year whether particular individuals in particular positions.
Sean, would it make sense to specify which meeting of the year? Like first meeting of the...
That's actually in section 5.01. We need, there's a blank in there that we need to...
Oh, okay, sorry. That's what I'm thinking.
So and then the second, section 401 discusses the role of the chair. Again, one of the issues that we address in section 4.01 and 4.01B is there is no vice chair per se set forth in this. So what I've proposed here is that if the chair notifies the board that the chair is not going to be available for a meeting, or if the chair is unexpectedly absent, then by operation of these bylaws, the secretary would automatically preside over the next meeting the chair is available for. So that we'll have some continuity, and we will know up front who's going to preside at the meeting, and the board will know, the board will have had a role in deciding who is the secretary because they'll have elected that person. So this will allow for some continuity of process if the chair is unable to. And then we discussed the secretary of the board and the treasurer of the board. I did try to be careful so that to differentiate between the treasurer of the board and the state treasurer, who is a member of the board, so that anytime there is a reference to the state treasurer, it is to the state treasurer. And if you don't see the word state in front of the word treasurer, then that's the treasurer of the MES. It did also, in the section on the treasurer, had a provision about the deputy treasurer. As a practical matter, deputy treasurer is authorized really to sign the checks and to make the financial transactions happen. But that will be a position that the board will reconfirm who the deputy treasurer is every year. Then we discussed the board clerk, provided a little more detail about the clerk, and if the clerk is not available for a meeting, then the executive director will designate another staff person to fill in. I was a little more specific in this section. Might otherwise think, primarily because I wanted to make it clear that a lot of the bookkeeping activities of the board, that if you read the statute, it's the secretary that should be doing it, but in reality, it's the clerk who's been delegated that duty. So the clerk will be undertaking most of the paperwork functions for the board. And finally, there's the lawyer. And Every once in a while, we have a new board member who wants to know why the Attorney General has to be the lawyer. So now we have the bylaws to confirm what's already in.
They read section 4.6.
And then we have other staff. So this is to make it clear that the board has a right to rely on other staff members of the service in carrying out their board duties. And it also makes it clear that if a staff member is assigned to do some function, that's within their job responsibility. Section 501 deals with meetings, and this is where I left the blank there for the organizational meeting. Sections 501 and 502 really set up two different kinds of meetings. There are the regular meetings, and this anticipates that there will be monthly meetings based on a calendar that the board approves each year at this organization. Then there may be other meetings called special meetings that the board holds, you know, if there's an emergency situation or something comes up that the board needs to meet. 502 sets forth the process for setting one of those special meetings. In 501, we have the regular meetings and organizational meetings. I would lay it out to the board to decide what works, what the board thinks would be the best meeting year, organizational meeting.
I suggested to you July for a couple of reasons. That's when the new board members are in panel, and so that would be an opportunity to, number one, orient them and then take them through the organizational meeting where all of the committee assignments and everything else are done. And there may be times where a member comes on off cycle, but by and large, and the terms start July 1st, and our meeting is always the last Thursday of the month. So it seems to be in sync. September would be okay, but I'm thinking that July would have more immediacy to it and would be more relevant in terms of you only got a 7-member board, and so I would suggest the July meeting be the official meeting.
I would agree.
So I can modify this draft provided it will be the July meeting that will be the organization.
Right. I approve what Dr. Neal is saying. Secretary Neal. Secretary Neal is our Secretary Neal. So, I agree with his idea on this.
Excellent. I know we have pre-planned July meeting and all that, but if something happens and it cannot be held in July, because now we are waiting until the end of July for that meeting as an organization. Do you want to put an alternate that the next meeting will be considered?
What I would say is the first meeting of each, or first meeting the board conducts for each fiscal year.
Okay.
So that if that gets pushed back into August.
Okay, okay, that makes sense.
You want to say first regular meeting? Because you don't want to have, if the special meeting is called, you don't want to have to.
Do all that business.
Yeah, right.
Say first regular meeting.
I have a question. It says the first meeting of the calendar year. Should it say the fiscal year? Because it says.
Yes.
Yes, we'll make that change.
Okay.
Were there any other comments on that particular section? So we move to section 503, and that's how board meetings are conducted. Again, the 5-member quorum requirement is in the statute. I did want to clarify that we can't, if for some reason we have several members absent, but that Ms. Keeley and Treasurer Davis both show up, we get to count we get 2 votes for quorum, that won't happen. So the treasurer and the treasurer's designee count as collectively one person for quorum requirements. And also they only count as one person for voting as well.
Don't worry, unless it's a really controversial vote and we both want to vote.
I'll let you guys decide that. So, and I also specified here in B that the meetings, unless stated elsewhere, that the meetings will be held here at headquarters. And part of that thinking behind that is that if there is going to be public participation, then the public would participate by coming here to headquarters. There is no right under these bylaws for an individual to participate or make public comment electronically. They can submit written testimony, or they can come here in person to do that. We get into public participation later on. But we do confirm that we can conduct meetings electronically. Board members have the burden of having the appropriate technology to participate in the board meeting. C deals with, again, as a recitation of the statute, 5 members have to affirmatively vote for any action of the board. And again, the state treasurer and the treasurer's designee only have 1 vote between them. We do say that we'll record each of the votes. We actually do all that now because we're recording the meetings. D was one that I wanted to make sure we addressed. It's really never been an issue in the past, but I thought we needed to deal with it up front, which is proxy voting. And my suggestion is that proxy voting not be permitted. If a board member wants to vote, they need to participate in the meeting to do so. The rest of this, if you want to move forward, meetings have to be conducted in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. And then it's really the order of precedence is the Open Meetings Act, these bylaws, and then the latest revised version of Robert's Rules of Order. The portion of the meeting that's open to the public has to be live streamed. That's actually part of the statute. It's a provision in the Open Meetings Act that applies to MES. And then there's a bit of detail here about what has to be circulated and proposed. Part of the reason for the detail is because there is a provision in the Open Meetings Act that applies to MES and several other entities that has very detailed procedures and rules for posting of agenda and other material. So I'm really just reciting those statutory provisions in here. But we also wanted to have a drop dead date by which time the board needs to be providing materials as well. So that's the opening part of that. Okay. 504 is the public comment provision. It states that the board will establish a protocol for advanced sign-up for participation for public comments. We haven't developed that yet. That will be the next thing that we'll work on, is that actual protocol for what does the public have to do to be able to address the board. We've never really had that. We've just left it to the discretion of the chair. I can tell you, I can count on one hand the number of times a member of the public has shown up in the last 35 years to address the board. But it may happen. So we want to have a protocol in place to give the public the correct opportunity to address the board, but also allow the chair to control the meeting. I also wanted to clarify in that section that there are times when the chair may want to allow a member, some other individual, usually it's a staff person who wants to address the board on a particular matter, and that's permissible at any time. 505 is the meeting minutes, and this also tracks what is required in the Open Meetings Act. The next article deals with committees. And the way the bylaws are set up, there are 2 standing committees. The membership of those standing committees will be approved by the board at the organizational meeting. Each of those standing committees has to have at least 3 members, 3 voting members, which means even if Dr. Glass is a member of either of those committees, which he can be, because he's not allowed to vote, you would still have to have 3 other members participating on a committee. 2 standing committees are the Human Resources Committee and the Committee on Audit. We'll come back to those in a second. But you can see there are just some general procedures in the rest of Section 601 that deal with how standing committees will operate. If for some reason a vacancy arises on a standing committee before the organizational meeting, then the chair of the board can appoint a new member to serve on the committee through the remainder of that term. So it's not the chairman of the committee that makes that appointment, it's the chairman of the board. Okay, and if we go to the next section. So we have the Committee on Audit. And I just laid out some provisions in there about what kinds of matters would come before the Committee on Audit. Not just financial audits, but also the legislative audits that are conducted. And then also kind of overseeing or reviewing the scope of the internal audit function. I thought those were 3 main areas: financial, legislative, and internal auditors. Generally, the committees be dealing with. And then the Committee on Human Resources, a little bit broader scope in the sense that that committee would review all of the agency's policies and regulations dealing with human resources matters, benefits, compensation, recruitment, just general oversight of the HR function. So they will have the pleasure of dealing with the next iteration of the drug and alcohol policy that we talked about earlier. There's 2 specific provisions in here that I've added as well to give it a little bit more specificity. The first is that the committee will be the entity that manages the process of the executive director's evaluation. The statute requires that process be published on the agency's website. So this will make it a little clearer that the HR committee is going to manage that whole process and make sure the members are contacted with the evaluation documents and be the recipient of those documents and collect the information that's received. And then the agency adopted a conflicts of interest policy last year. One of the provisions of that policy says that that a group of board members will review the disclosure statements that are submitted. This clarifies that it's going to be the HR committee that does that, rather than a separate group of board members. Of course, in both instances, the board may expand the scope of the duties of either committee at any time. 604, there may be a need for other committees, so this allows the chair to create ad hoc committees, not to last for more than a year unless the board acts to extend it. And it could be any number of members, tasked with whatever the chair determines is appropriate. All right, and then the committee meetings, generally these are a recitation of provisions that deal with how the board meetings are conducted. The standing committees are definitely subject to the Open Meetings Act. We will look at each situation where an ad hoc committee is created to determine if the Open Meetings Act applies to that entity as well. But in general, we're following the same procedures for committees as we are for the full board. Although the one thing that we don't have in the committee meetings, there is no provision in there about public participation or addressing the committees. And I don't think the committees probably want that responsibility. They want to have the ability to not allow the public to participate, that the public can submit written comments if they want to participate in something or comment on something the committees are doing. Article 7 deals with compensation of the board members. Section 701 is really a reworking of existing law. There is a provision in the MES Act that says that board members who don't already hold a public office can receive the per diem compensation. The reason we, like I said, a public office of profit, because there's a state constitutional provision that says that if you already hold an office of profit, and you can accept a second office and you receive compensation for that, you're deemed to have given up your first office. So certainly, you probably
I definitely don't want to do that.
In other words, quit your day job.
Exactly.
So that clarifies that provision. And again, this issue has come up in the past about when does the new per diem, when the per diem is changed, when does it take effect? Under the Constitution, the board could modify that per diem compensation at any time, but it would only apply to new board members or existing board members who started a new term after the effective date of that change. Unfortunately, what we've had come up in the past is the board makes a change in the per diem, and then for whatever reason, the governor's office doesn't go through the process of reappointing a board member, and they're stuck with the old per diem because they haven't been reappointed yet. So this clarifies that as well. And then board members can be reimbursed for their expenses, and deputy treasurer will designate someone on his staff who will be the person that the board members will turn to submit their receipts. Given the issues that came up through the General Assembly review of MES, I did want to clarify that the board members have to submit their expense reimbursements within 30 days, which is the requirement for MES employees as well. Finally, so amendments to the bylaws. So that the board does not decide at a meeting that they want to amend the bylaws because they're not satisfied with something. This requires that there has to be at least a 21-day notice to the board members and to the council and to the board clerk when a member wants to propose a change to the bylaws. And finally, you'll see whether the board wants to act on these today or they want to think about it and act on it either of the next 2 meetings that are scheduled. The bylaws won't be effective until July 1st. Open for any other questions the board members may have.
Well, it's a major task to undertake, and I think we're going to have to figure out exactly how we want to get that done and thought about. Anybody on the board have any questions on this at the moment? All right, then we will go forward. I want to thank you very much, Councilor Sean, because this was hard work. I know these things are complex, and you worked very hard on this. And Secretary Neal, thank you for with that. Appreciate that very much. Any other questions on this? Any other matters at the moment? All right, thank you, and we will now proceed on. As you
Move it with changes that were discussed.
Judge Smolkin, would you like to ask the board to act on these today, or do you want to wait until the next meeting to actually act on these? We'll add it to the agenda for the May meeting.
I think it might be a good idea. I'll let the board about that. I think it might be a good idea to wait a while for that next idea, which would be in May. I think we all have to take a look at this because a lot of these things are fairly complex. But I'll put it this way: if there is right now, if there are people who are willing to go ahead and put it into right now, as you suggested, that's fine. But I think perhaps we ought to thought about it before we go forward to answer on it. If anybody agrees with that, let me know.
Judge, this is Marion. I do have like a couple of minor suggestions that I was going to send to Sean, so I would prefer that it wait till the next board meeting.
Okay. Is there anybody who wants to discuss any differently on this way? Because we've discussed it. Maybe we could just ask whether there's anyone who wishes to go together now or goes to May time. So if there's anybody who does not agree with waiting until May, just please let me know and we'll put out a questionnaire at the moment. Well, I don't see any, so why don't we do that? What you had said, Ms. Wang, I agree that we talk about it in May. That way we have an opportunity to take a look at this because some of these are very complex. And Sean has done a terrific job to put them together. But once again, these are matters that ought to be looked upon, I think. If you wish to say anything else about it, I'd be happy to hear you. No.
I'll circulate a revised draft to the board members when I have Ms. Wong's comments and any other comments that members may have. And I'll fix the things that we talked about today about the organizational meeting.
Between now and next class. Yeah. All right. Thank you. I think that's terrific. And thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay. The next matter we have is whether there are any other business. I think we've covered some of them, but anyway, are there any other businesses anyone wishes to open in session?
Judge, this is Marion again. Yes. This matter actually was precipitated by the imminent departure of Secretary Neal and myself, but it turns out I don't think our imminent departure really bears on this. But I did want to bring to your attention one procedural matter regarding the completion of the executive director's evaluation. Earlier this year, you'll remember that each board member completed an evaluation form for the executive director. And the timing of that evaluation, in part, was intended to provide information for consideration for the executive director's salary review. Thus, the evaluation process was substantially completed. However, there is a bit of a timing issue because according to the evaluation process that was approved by the board in February of last year, the evaluation was to have been completed after issuance of the final audited financial report. Excuse me, my coffee. And as you know, the final audited financial report will not be completed until July of this year. So to address this timing issue, I just wanted to alert the board that the HR committee meeting will be evaluating certain options and recommendations to address this timing issue. And we intend to also present to the board at the next meeting the committee's recommendations. I just wanted to alert the board members to this issue, and if in the meantime, any member who is not a member of the HR committee, please let us know if you have any other thoughts or comments. Or you're free to participate in our meeting. So we'll be sending out, Pam will be sending out the notices in that for that meeting. Thank you, Judge.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Lang. I appreciate that. Anybody have any questions with regard to that matter? All right. Once again, thank you for putting this on the table.
Judge, I have one additional new business item just to make the board aware of. Thank you. So just yesterday, the county executive from Wacomico County reached out to, well, the reach out actually happened on Tuesday, but the execution of the meeting was yesterday, just to ask for assistance from MES Environmental Operations to evaluate their landfill and a needs assessment for the landfill. So minor, non-emergency, but not something that you wait for even our normal contractual process to work out. So next week, leaders from Environmental Operations will start an evaluation of an assessment of their airspace. So that's how high they can build and their capacity and how long that capacity will last, and leachate management that they've had some issues with. So I just wanted to let the board know that we're responding to another, you know, you don't want to say it, it's like the avian flu stuff last year. You know, they're stepping up to the plate to help out any county, any situation in need, but not anywhere near any kind of takeover, just applying engineering support, engineering and operational support just for evaluation purposes. So just wanted to make the board aware of it. Wacomico County, state, right. One end of the state to the other.
So, anybody else have anything on that? If not, I think we will now go forward. There is a next meeting on Thursday, the 25th of May, 2023 at 9:30 a.m. Also, there will be an audit committee on May the 19th of 2023 at 3 p.m. if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? All right, that is correct. All right. Now there is a question of a closed session. The board intends to meet in closed session for the following reasons as permitted under section 305B8 of the General Provisions article of Annotated Code of Maryland, and that is to discuss potential litigation in which the agency may be a plaintiff. Are there any members of the board who has any objection to this? All right. I hear none at this time. If there are any persons otherwise who objects to the board meeting in closed sessions, they do have an objection. They should contact MES through website at www.menv.com. All right. For the members of the board, is there a motion for the board to meet in closed session at this matter? All right. If there is a second.
Second.
A second. Are there any other questions on this matter? If not, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any others? Any not voting or otherwise? All right. Well, therefore, then it has been it will be a closed meeting. And after the vote, the board will adjourn.